going to analyze the approaches to corporate governance in the public sector. Approaches to corporate governance in the public sector. Now, corporate governance in the public sector refers to the systems, processes, and principles by which public organizations are directed, controlled, and held accountable. You understand? Approaches to corporate governance in public sector. So we are defining corporate governance in the public sector as the systems, the processes, and principles by which public organizations are directed, controlled, and held accountable. And the aim is to ensure that public resources are managed effectively and efficiently to achieve public policy, objectives and to serve the public interest. So there are several approaches to corporate governance in the public sector, and each approach has its unique features and emphasis. That is what we intend to study in today's lesson. We are going to give a brief enumeration of the approaches to corporate governance in public sector. So the first approach is known as traditional public administration. The traditional public administration is an approach that emphasizes the hierarchical structures. It emphasizes bureaucratic rules and centralized decision making. It emphasizes hierarchical structures. It emphasizes bureaucratic rules and centralized decision making. These are the key features of traditional public administration. It emphasizes hierarchical structures, bureaucratic rules, and centralized decision making. And this structure or approach prioritizes accountability, but it is quite rigid and slow to respond to changing circumstances. Because of bureaucracy, change in this approach is not easy. Traditional public administration, that is the traditional public administration. Now, the second approach is a new public management. New public management. The new public management is yet another approach to corporate governance in the public sector. This approach emerged in the late 1980s and 1990s as a reaction to the perceived inefficiencies in the traditional public administration. It emphasizes market-oriented principles such as competition, emphasizes market-oriented principles. It emphasizes market-oriented principles such as measurement and customer focus. It emphasizes market-oriented principles such as competition, performance measurement, and customer focus. and customer focus. Do you understand? And candidates, the new public management also aims to improve efficiency. It aims to improve effectiveness, neglect of social equity. So that is the downside of the new public management. It focuses mainly on the economic side of things at the neglect of the social equity. Inefficiencies in the traditional public administration. The third approach is the new governance. New governance, or we can say new public governance. New public governance, that is the word. New public governance. New public governance. New public governance is an approach which is a response to perceived shortcomings of the new public management. You understand? Which emphasizes collaboration, network governance, emphasizes collaboration, it emphasizes network and citizen. Public problems are often complex and require the involvement of multi-stakeholders. So the new public governance model aims to create a more inclusive and responsive and responsible, complex to manage, and may lack clear lines of accountability. So this one also has downside. You've seen it emphasizes collaboration, network governance, and citizen participation. The reason being that require the involvement of multi-stakeholders. This model welcomes many stakeholders, or what we are calling network governance, but that in itself is also a challenge because managing many stakeholders can be challenging, and that is the disadvantage of this new public governance model. It may be complex to manage, and there may be no clear lines of accountability. The fourth approach is a public value management approach. Public value management approach focuses on creating public value, which is defined as the value that public services create for citizens and the society. So the public value management emphasizes the importance of understanding and the importance of responding to the needs of the citizens and their preferences. It aims to make the public sector more relevant and responsive, but it can also be difficult to measure and may lead to conflicts between different stakeholders. That is the public value management. The fifth approach is good governance, a broader set of principles including accountability, transparency, participation, the rule of law, responsiveness, and so on. It emphasizes the importance of ethical leadership, effective institutions, sound public policy, and so on. So the good governance model aims also to create a stable and a predictable environment for public services delivery, but it can also be challenging to achieve in practice. So these are, in brief, 5 approaches to corporate governance in the public. The Kenyan public sector has adopted a mix of these approaches. The traditional public administration still plays a significant role, especially in government ministries and departments. However, there has been a growing emphasis on the new public management. There has been a growing emphasis on the new public management principles, particularly in the areas of performance management and results-based budgeting. And in recent years, there has also been a shift towards the new public governance, which the uh, government recognizes as being important in terms of collaboration and because of the aspect of citizen participation in public service delivery. And we know that the Constitution of Kenya enshrines the principles of good governance, the principles of good governance, including transparency, accountability, public participation, as fundamental to conduct of public affairs. So here is your today's assignment on approaches to corporate governance. 1. Discuss the main approaches to corporate governance and the implications for public sector organizations. 2. What are the key differences between the new public management and the new public governance approaches, and how have they influenced corporate governance reforms in Kenya? 3. How can public value management be integrated into existing corporate governance frameworks to enhance the relevance and responsiveness of public services? 4. What are the challenges and opportunities in adopting a good governance approach to corporate governance in the public sector? In our next lesson, we are going to discuss corporate relationships in the government. Bye. I greet you all and welcome you to the Public Sector Governance, Policy and Administration class. Today we are going to discuss the values-based leadership in the public sector. Values-based leadership. Now, the values-based leadership is a leadership approach that prioritizes ethical principles, integrity, and national values as the foundation for decision making and actions in the public sector. It emphasizes the importance of aligning personal and organizational values with the core principles of the society and of value-based leadership approach. The principles. We are going to discuss the core principles. Principles of value-based leadership. And I've described values-based leadership as a leadership approach that emphasizes ethical principles like integrity and national values like patriotism as the foundation for decision making and action. So the first principle is integrity. Integrity will always appear at the top as an ethical principle. Integrity. Now, upholding honesty. Integrity means upholding honesty, transparency, and accountability in all principle. Integrity. The second one is service to the public. Service to the public. Service to the public. Right? Prioritizing the needs and the interests of the public above personal gain or political considerations is the second principle of value-based leadership. Prioritizing service to the public. 3 is respect for human dignity. Respect for human dignity. This means treating all individuals with respect and dignity, regardless of their background, regardless of their personal characteristics, regardless of their tribe, their race, regardless of their religious inclinations, and so on. Respect for human dignity is a values-based leadership principle. 4, professionalism and excellence. Professionalism and excellence. It means striving for excellence in service delivery and maintaining high standards of professionalism in all aspects of work in the public sector. 5, accountability and transparency. Accountability and transparency is yet a values-based principle. That means taking responsibility for one's actions and being open and transparent in communication and decision-making processes. 6, fairness and equity. Fairness and equity is a values-based principle. And this means that ensuring that all citizens are treated equally and have equal access to public services and opportunities. Treating all equally without any form of discrimination, that is a principle. 7, patriotism and national values. Patriotism and national values. It means demonstrating loyalty and commitment to the nation and promoting national unity. Patriotism and national values. So these are 7 principles of values-based leadership. Then what are the benefits of value-based leadership? Benefits. The first benefit is that it improves public trust. This approach improves public trust. Value-based leadership improves public trust. When public servants act with integrity and prioritize the public interest, it builds trust and confidence in the government and its institutions. The members of the public are able to trust the government and to trust the institutions of government. 2, enhances service delivery. Value-based leadership fosters a culture of service excellence, leading to improved quality and efficiency in public service delivery. 3, ethical decision making. Value-based leaders make decisions that are consistent with ethical principles and national values, promoting fairness, equity, and justice. It also leads to reduced corruption. A strong ethical foundation helps to prevent corruption and promote transparency in the public sector. Then lastly, there is a benefit in relation to the staff. It motivates the staff or the public servants. Employees in the public service are more likely to be motivated and more likely to be engaged when they work in an environment where values are respected and upheld. So these are 5 benefits and 5 principles of value-based leadership. The first principle is integrity. Number 2, service to the public. Number 3, respect for human dignity. Number 4, professionalism and excellence. Number 5, accountability and transparency. Number 6, fairness and equity. 7, it promotes patriotism and national values. There are 5 benefits of value-based leadership. 1, improves public trust. 2, it enhances service delivery. 3, it encourages ethical decision making. 4, reduces corruption and motivates public servants. That's the end of the lesson. Assignment 1. How does value-based leadership contribute to ethical decision making and integrity in the public sector? 2. What are the key challenges in implementing value-based leadership in the Kenyan public sector, and how can these challenges be overcome? 3. What are the specific national values that should guide the conduct of public servants in Kenya, and how can these values be integrated into leadership practices? 4. How can values-based leadership be evaluated and measured to ensure its effectiveness in promoting ethical behavior and integrity in the public sector? In our next lesson, we are going to discuss professional codes and standards of governance in the public sector. Bye. Receive my greetings and welcome to the lesson, which is strategies for handling ethical and integrity challenges. We are going to discuss the strategies for handling ethical and integrity challenges. But before we get into the strategies, I think it's important for us to first of all highlight some of the ethical and integrity challenges in the public sector. So let's first identify some of the challenges. These are ethical and integrity challenges in the public sector. Now, ethical and integrity challenges are pervasive, you can say, in Kenya's public sector, which hinder the sector's efficiency, effectiveness, and public trust. And there are several key issues that contribute to the complex problem of ethics and integrity in the public sector in Kenya today. And the first challenge is corruption. 1, corruption. Corruption. Corruption remains a significant challenge, manifesting in bribery, embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of office. And corruption erodes public resources. Corruption distorts decision-making processes. It also perpetuates inequality in the society. And the 2021 National Ethics and Corruption Survey by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission found that bribery remains the most prevalent form of corruption in service delivery in Kenya. The second challenge is nepotism and favoritism. Favoritism and nepotism. Now, the practice of favoring relatives and favoring friends in appointments and promotions, often at the expense of merit, undermines the principles of fairness, the principle of equal opportunity, and so on. And that can lead to incompetent individuals occupying key positions, which then hinders service delivery and erodes public trust. In Kenya today, we have individuals holding office to which they do not qualify at all. and that is because of nepotism and favoritism, where individuals are appointed and promoted to positions which they do not merit. That is a challenge in public sector. There is also lack of transparency and accountability. Accountability and transparency. Lack of transparency and accountability is another challenge. There is opacity in decision-making processes and lack of access to information, which fuel suspicion and mistrust. And the absence of clear accountability mechanisms allows unethical behavior to go unchecked, further eroding public trust and confidence in the public sector. 4 is weak leadership and ethical culture. In the public sector in Kenya, we have a weak leadership and ethical culture. This is lack of strong ethical leadership at various levels of the public sector, which sets a poor example for employees. And when leaders engage in or tolerate unethical behavior, it creates a culture of impunity where corruption and other malpractices thrive. So when leaders are unethical, then it sets a very bad example, because remember, it all begins at the top. When the tone at the top is an ethical tone, then that is a challenge to integrity and ethics in the public sector. 5, inadequate enforcement of laws and regulations. Inadequate enforcement of laws and regulations. Now, despite the existence of laws and regulations that are aimed at curbing corruption, in Kenya there are many laws, there are many regulations that have been enacted to curb corruption and promote ethical conduct. But their enforcement remains weak, and that's why we have corruption being rampant in the public sector. And that is due to various factors, including inadequate resources. We have also political interference with the enforcement. There is also lack of political will to fight off these malpractices. So there is inadequate enforcement of laws and regulations, which is a challenge. 6 is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Public officials often face situations where their personal interests conflict with public duties. And without clear guidelines and robust conflict of interest policies, officials lack or make decisions that benefit themselves or their associates at the expense of public good, and that is a challenge. We've also many instances of abuse of power or abuse of office. The misuse of official authority for personal gain is another ethical challenge, and that can manifest in various forms, such as demanding bribes, using public resources for personal purposes, intimidating subordinates, and so on. Abuse of power. We have individuals in power who are abusing subordinates, who are misusing subordinates, and that is a challenge. All right? Intimidating subordinates, using the office for personal gain, abusing the office. This is yet another challenge in the public sector. So there are many challenges like inadequate remuneration, also inadequate remuneration. We have some officers in the public sector who are not remunerated adequately. Low salaries, poor working conditions for the public servants can create incentive for engaging in corrupt practices to supplement their income. And that can also lead to low morale, it can lead to demotivation, further undermining ethical conduct. So these are some of the challenges of ethics and integrity in the public sector: corruption, nepotism and favoritism, lack of accountability and transparency, weak leadership and ethical culture, inadequate enforcement of laws and regulations, conflict of interest, abuse of power, inadequate remuneration. Now that you've understood the challenges, let's now discuss some of the strategies for handling ethical and integrity challenges. What are some of the methods or approaches that can be used to address these challenges in the public sector? Now, candidates, the public sector in Kenya, just like many others worldwide, faces numerous ethical and integrity challenges, which you have highlighted here. And these challenges hinder the efficient and effective delivery of public services. These challenges erode public trust. These challenges undermine the overall development agenda. And to address these challenges, there are various strategies that can be employed. One of them being the strengthening of legal and institutional framework. Strengthening the legal and institutional framework. Strengthening legal and institutional framework. And how can legal and institutional framework be strengthened? One way is to review and update legislation. Review and update legislation. Laws and regulations governing ethics and integrity in the public sector should be regularly reviewed and regularly updated to address emerging challenges and loopholes regularly, because the corrupt are always updating their corrupt ways, and therefore there has to be a way in which legislation is also updated and reviewed in order to take care of the emerging challenges and loopholes in legislation. Another way to strengthen legal and institutional framework is to empower oversight institutions. Empower oversight institutions like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Office of the Auditor General, and so that these institutions are able to deal with the issues arising from unethical conduct from the public servants. You understand? Institutions should be empowered, should be adequately empowered by being adequately funded and empowered to carry out their mandates effectively. Another way to strengthen legal and institutional framework is to establish independent ethics bodies. Establish independent ethics bodies. Independent ethics bodies can provide impartial advice and guidance on ethical issues. They can investigate allegations of misconduct and recommend appropriate action. In Kenya, at least we have the EACC, which is an independent ethics body. That's how to strengthen legal and institutional frameworks. The second strategy to handle ethical and integrity challenges is promoting ethical leadership and culture. Promoting ethical leadership and culture. And ethical leadership and culture can be promoted through one, ethical leadership training. One way to promote ethical leadership and culture is by conducting ethical leadership trainings. These are leadership development programs which include strong emphasis on ethics and integrity. Leaders should be equipped with the knowledge and skills to create an ethical culture in their organizations. Another way is leading by example. Ethical leadership and culture can be promoted by leading by example. Leaders at all levels should demonstrate a commitment to ethical behavior and hold themselves accountable to highest standards of integrity. Leaders should hold themselves accountable to the highest level of integrity. That is one way to promote ethical leadership and culture. Leading by example. 3. Code of conduct and ethics. Code of ethics and conduct. Code of conduct and ethics. There has to be a clear and comprehensive code of conduct and ethics that is developed and communicated to all public servants. And the code should outline expected behaviors and provide guidelines on ethical dilemmas. That is how to promote ethical leadership and culture. The third point is through enhancing transparency and accountability. Enhancing transparency and accountability. And how do you enhance transparency and accountability? One way is to have open data and information sharing. Open data and information sharing. That means making information about government operations, budgets, and contracts easily accessible to the public, because that then can help to deter corruption and promote accountability. By having a system where information is shared openly, that enhances transparency and accountability. 2. Whistleblower protection. Those who blow the whistle should be protected. There has to be robust whistleblower protection mechanisms that should be put in place to encourage individuals to report unethical behavior within the public service. And that reporting should be without reprisals. Whistleblower protection. 3. Regular audits. There has to be regular audits and evaluations. Conduct regular audits and evaluations. There has to be regular audits and regular evaluations of public programs, of public projects, because that then can help to identify and address areas of weakness and potential misconduct. When audits are conducted, problems are revealed and corrective measures are taken in time. So that is the third strategy. We have explained how to enhance transparency and accountability. Moving on to point number 4. The fourth strategy is public participation and engagement. Public participation and engagement is another strategy. And how is this possible? This can be done through one way is through citizen citizen feedback mechanisms. Citizen feedback mechanism. That means creating channels for citizens to provide feedback on public services, because that then can help to identify areas where improvements are needed and hold public servants accountable. This another way is through participatory budget making. This is B, participatory budget making. Participatory budget making. Participatory or just participatory budgeting. That involves involving citizens in the budgeting process, which can then help to ensure that public resources are allocated in a way that reflects the priorities of the community. Now, the fifth strategy, number 5, is, remember, candidates, we are discussing strategies for handling ethical and integrity challenges. We've looked at strengthening legal and institutional framework, promoting ethical leadership and culture, enhancing transparency and accountability, and then public participation. Another way is through capacity building. And together with capacity building, we can add training. Capacity building and training can help handle ethical and integrity challenges. And how is that possible? One is through ethics training. Ethics training. Ethics training is one way to build the capacity and reduce regular ethics training for public servants, which will then help to raise awareness of ethical issues and provide them with the tools to make ethical decisions. 2, skills development. Development of skills. That means investing in skills development, which can help enhance the capacity of public servants to deliver quality services and resist corrupt practices. Train the civil servants, develop their skills so that they can deliver their services and do away with corrupt uh, corrupt practices. That is point number 5, capacity building and training. Now, is the next way to deal with the ethical and integrity challenges is number 6, technology and communication. Technology and communication. And how can technology and communication handle ethical and integrity challenges? One is through e-governance. E-governance. Utilizing technology to streamline processes, to reduce bureaucracy and increase transparency, which can then help to minimize opportunities for corruption. One way to use technology is by having e-technology, which involves utilizing technology to streamline processes. This technology, e-governance, can reduce bureaucracy so that the human element is reduced from government processes, so that people do not deal with people when getting services, but people can engage with websites and other technologies to get government services. Like when applying for licenses, you just apply on e-citizen. When making payment, you make payment electronically. That can help to tackle ethical and integrity challenges. We can also take advantage of data analytics, data integrity challenges, using data analytics to identify patterns of unethical behavior. We can use data analytics to identify patterns of unethical behavior, which can help to target anti-corruption efforts more effectively. We can now target anti-corruption efforts by taking advantage of data analytics. Data analytics can help us identify patterns in corrupt practices and so on. So we've studied or we've discussed 6 strategies for handling ethical and studying these strategies. We first of all identified the challenges, and one of the major challenges we talked about is corruption, nepotism and favoritism, lack of transparency and accountability, weak leadership and ethical culture, inadequate enforcement of laws and regulations, conflict of interest, abuse of power, inadequate remuneration. These are some of the ethical and integrity challenges in the public sector. We've gone ahead to discuss the strategies for handling these challenges, and we've grouped these strategies in 4 broad category ways to strengthen legal and institutional frameworks. One is reviewing and updating legislation, empowering oversight institutions like funding, capacity building, and so on, establishing independent ethics bodies. Then the second category is culture. One way to promote ethical leadership and culture is by having ethical leadership trainings, leading Greetings and welcome to the lesson. Today we are going to discuss professional codes and standards of governance in the public sector. Professional codes and standards of governance in the public sector. Now, these codes and standards are essential for ensuring ethical conduct, accountability, transparency, and effective service delivery. The codes and standards provide a framework for public servants to uphold the highest levels of integrity and professionalism in their duties. And the key professional codes and standards in Kenya include the Constitution of Kenya, the Public Officer Ethics Act, the Leadership and Integrity Act. We have the Public Service Commission Code of Regulations, and we also have regulations that have been developed by the EACC. So let's briefly explain some of these codes and standards, beginning with the Constitution of Kenya of 2010. Constitution of, and it sets out the fundamental principles and values that guide public service. This constitution emphasizes integrity, transparency, accountability, and also public participation in government. The second standard is the Public Officers Ethics Act. The Public Officers Ethics Act outlines the ethical conduct expected of public officers, including avoiding conflicts of interest, declaring wealth, and refraining from corrupt practices. Public Officers Ethics Act of 2003. Number 3 is the Leadership and Integrity Act. The Leadership and Integrity Act that was enacted in 2012 is an act of parliament that establishes the legal framework for promoting ethical leadership and integrity in the public service. This act outlines the requirements for leadership positions, including the need for integrity, the need for competence, and suitability. Leadership and Integrity Act. We have another code that has been developed by the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission Code of Conduct. The Public Service Commission Code of Conduct and Regulations. Code of Regulations. Public Service Commission Code of Regulations has been developed, and it outlines the standards of conduct for public servants. It gives the details, all right? And it covers areas such as discipline, performance management, conflict of interest, and so on. Then lastly, Code of Conduct and Ethics for Public Officers. Code of Conduct and Ethics for Public Officers is a code that is developed by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which provides detailed guidelines on ethical conduct for public officers. This code covers issues such as gifts and hospitality. It covers areas such as the use of public resources and the relationship that the public servants have or should have, the kind of relationship between the public servants and the public sector. the relationship with the public sector. That is covered in the Code of Conduct and Ethics for Public Officers that has been developed by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Then we have professional codes of conduct. Professional codes of conduct. Professional codes of conduct from different professional bodies. There are various professions within the public sector, such as accountants. We have professionals like engineers. We have doctors, lawyers who work within the public sector. And these professionals have their own codes of conduct that guide their ethical and professional behavior. Like the accountants, we have the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which regulates the ethical conduct and behavior of all accountants, those who work in the private sector as well as those who work in the public sector. So that's all for professional codes and standards of governance in the public sector. We've outlined some of the professional codes and standards of governance in the public sector, beginning with the Constitution, the Public Officers Ethics Act, the Leadership and the Integrity Act, the Public Service Commission Code of Regulations. 5 is the Code of Conduct and Ethics for Public Officers that is developed by the Anti-Corruption Commission. Then we have the professional codes of conduct within the public sector. That is all for the professional codes and standards of governance and standards of governance applicable to the Kenyan public sector. 2, how effective are these codes and standards in promoting ethical conduct and preventing corruption in the public sector? 3, what are the challenges in enforcing professional codes and standards of governance, and how can these challenges be addressed? Promoting adherence to professional codes and standards in the public sector. In our next lesson, we are going to study the framework for enforcement of ethics and integrity in the public sector. Bye. Receive my greetings and welcome to the Public Sector Governance, Policy and Administration session. Today we begin on the next chapter, which is Leadership, Integrity and National Values in Public Service. Leadership, Integrity and National Values in Public Service. These are 3 areas. Leadership, one is leadership. 2, that is leadership in public service, integrity in public service, and national values in public service. We are going to tackle each and every aspect of the subtopic leadership, integrity, and national values. Let us begin with leadership in public service. Leadership in public service in Kenya. Now, leadership in the Kenyan public service has many aspects. It is a multifaceted issue that has evolved over time, and it plays an important role in driving public sector reforms, ensuring efficient service delivery, and upholding the principles of good governance. We will begin by identifying some of the aspects of leadership in Kenya public service. We will identify the key aspects. The first one being ethical leadership. ethical leadership. Now, ethical conduct is a cornerstone of effective public service leadership, and leaders are expected to uphold high standards of integrity, transparency, and accountability in their decision making and actions. And here in Kenya, we have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which plays a crucial role in enforcing ethical standards and combating corruption in the public sector. So the first aspect of leadership in public service in Kenya is ethical leadership. The second aspect is transformative leadership. Transformative leadership inspires and motivates teams to achieve a shared vision. Transformative leaders foster innovation, creativity, and continuous improvement in the public service. So the Kenyan government has recognized the importance of transformative leadership and has implemented various programs to develop leadership capacity within the public service. Transformative leadership is one that inspires and motivates the public servants to achieve a shared vision. The third aspect of leadership in public service is citizen centric leadership or citizen centered, citizen centric leadership, citizen centric leadership. Now, public servants are ultimately accountable to the citizens they serve. So effective leaders prioritize the needs and interests of the citizens, ensuring that public services are accessible, affordable, and responsive to the diverse needs of the Kenyan population. And that involves active engagement with the communities and stakeholders to understand their concerns and their aspirations. Citizen-centered leadership is an aspect of leadership in public sector. The fourth aspect, performance management. Performance management. Now, performance management systems are essential for holding public servants accountable for their performance. And effective leaders set clear performance expectations, provide regular feedback, and also reward high-performing continuous improvement within the public service. Public performance management. Now, what are the challenges of public service leadership in Kenya? Challenges. What are some of the challenges to public service leadership in Kenya? Now, public service leadership in Kenya today faces a myriad of challenges that hinder its effectiveness and efficiency in delivering services to the citizens. And these challenges are many and interconnected, stemming from various factors, including one, political interference and patronage. Stemming from number one, political interference and patronage. Political interference is a persistent challenge in Kenya's public service leadership, and it often manifests as undue influence in appointments, promotions, and decision-making processes. Patronage, where leaders prioritize loyalty over competence, also undermines meritocracy. It undermines professionalism. All right? And that's why you may find that in Kenya, sometimes there is no meritocracy, there is no professionalism because of patronage, which is a challenge in the public service. Patronage is where leaders prioritize loyalty over competence, and that undermines professionalism, and that is a challenge today. 2, corruption and mismanagement. Corruption and mismanagement are challenges in the public service. It erodes public trust, it diverts resources from essential services, and perpetuates inequality in the society. Mismanagement, often linked to corruption, leads to inefficient use of resources, and it also leads to poor service delivery. Corruption and mismanagement. There is also the challenge of inadequate capacity and skills. Inadequate capacity and skills. Many public service leaders lack the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively manage complex issues and delivery services in a rapidly changing environment. And that is exacerbated by limited investment in training and development programs. So you have people working in the public service without skills, without the capacity, and this inadequacy is exacerbated by lack of training and lack of development programs in the public sector. So these are challenges: inadequate capacity and skills. Number 4, bureaucratic inertia and resistance to change. Bureaucratic inertia and resistance to change is another challenge in the public service leadership. Now, the Kenya public service is often characterized by bureaucratic inertia with resistance to change and innovation, and that hinders the implementation of reforms and the adoption of new technologies and practices that could improve service delivery. Bureaucratic inertia and resistance to change. 5, weak accountability and transparency. Weak accountability and weak transparency. Now, accountability mechanisms are often weak, making it difficult to hold public service leaders responsible for their actions. There is also lack of transparency in decision making and resource allocation, which further undermines public trust and confidence in the public service. Weak accountability and transparency. 6, inadequate resources and infrastructure. Inadequate resources and infrastructure are challenges in the public sector. Limited financial resources and inadequate infrastructure, particularly in rural areas, pose significant challenges to effective service delivery, and that can lead to understaffing, lack of essential equipment, and poor working conditions, which can demotivate public servants and hinder their performance. There are also 7, social cultural factors. Social cultural factors. These are deep-rooted social cultural factors such as tribalism and nepotism, which can influence leadership choices, and they can also influence decision-making processes. So these factors can perpetuate inequality and hinder merit-based appointments. We are talking about social cultural factors which can hinder merit-based appointments and promotions. So Kenya is deeply rooted into tribalism and nepotism, which influences choices, influences who works in the public sector, and that has hindered proper service delivery. So these are 7 challenges in the public sector. Let's now discuss integrity. Integrity. We've done with leadership. Integrity in the public service in Kenya. Integrity. Now, integrity in public service is a critical pillar of good governance and sustainable development. It refers to the adherence of high moral and ethical principles. It refers to honesty, transparency, and accountability in the conduct of public affairs. And it is essential for building public trust. It is essential for ensuring efficient and effective service delivery, and also promoting a just and equitable society. That is integrity. Key elements. What are the key elements of integrity in the public service? The first key element is honesty and truthfulness is the first key element of integrity in the public service. Public servants are expected to be honest. They're expected to be truthful in their dealings with the public, with their colleagues, and their superiors. And that involves providing accurate information. That involves avoiding lies, avoiding deception, and disclosing conflicts of interest. That's the meaning of being honest and truthful. The second key element is impartiality and fairness. Impartiality and fairness, being impartial, being fair. Public servants must treat all individuals equally and fairly, without discrimination, without favoritism, based on their face value. All right? They should not treat people based on ethnicity, based on their gender or religion or other personal attributes. And decisions should be based on merit and in accordance with the law. So if you are a public servant, you are required to treat all members of the public with impartiality and fairly, without discrimination, without favoritism, regardless of personal attributes, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their religion, regardless of their gender. Impartiality and fairness. The third key element of integrity, number 3, is accountability and transparency. Accountability and transparency. Public servants are accountable for their actions and decisions and must be transparent in their dealings with the public. And that includes providing clear information about their work, disclosing potential conflicts of interest, and being open to scrutiny. So if you are a public servant, you are required to ensure that you are open to scrutiny, that your actions can be queried, your decisions can be held to scrutiny by the by different bodies of the government or by the public. So accountability and transparency is a key element of integrity. The fourth element is respect for rule of law. Respect for rule of law. Respect for rule of law. Public servants must uphold the rule of law and respect the legal framework within which they operate, and that includes complying with laws, complying with policies, good governance. That's the fourth element, respect for rule of law. 5, professionalism and competence. Professionalism and competence is a key element of integrity. Public servants should strive for excellence in their work and should also maintain high levels of professionalism, and that includes acquiring and maintaining the necessary skills and knowledge to perform their duties effectively and efficiently. Being competent. Make sure that if you're a public servant, you provide your services with the highest level of excellence. That is professionalism and competence. So these are 5 key elements of integrity in the public service. 1, honesty and truthfulness. 2, impartiality and fairness. 3, accountability and transparency. 4, respect for the rule of law. 5, professionalism and competence. So let's now analyze the national values in public service. National values in the public service. Now, national values in the public service in Kenya are enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya and further elaborated in various laws and policies. These national values serve as guiding principles for the conduct and behavior of public servants, and they aim to foster a culture of integrity, professionalism, and service to the public. We'll analyze a few of these national values, and the first one is patriotism. Patriotism is the first national value in the Kenyan Constitution. That is Article 10. It reads that the national values and principles of governance in this article bind all state organs, state officers, public officers, and all persons whenever any of them applies or interprets this constitution, and next applies or interprets any law, or makes or implements public policy decisions. The national values and principles of governance include A, patriotism. So patriotism is the first one. Patriotism. Patriotism. You understand? Patriotism is the first value. And public servants are expected to demonstrate loyalty and commitment to the nation. Loyalty and commitment to the nation is being patriotic. Do you understand? Patriotism, national unity, national unity, non-discrimination, and respect for diversity. These are national values. You understand? Public servants are required to demonstrate loyalty and commitment to the nation. They are required to promote national unity and also to respect diversity. non-discrimination, and and respect for diversity, or respect for the diversity of the Kenyan society. And they should treat all citizens equally without any form of discrimination. That is a national value. The next one is human dignity. Human dignity. Human dignity. Together with equity, social justice, human dignity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, and so on. Public servants should prioritize the welfare of the public and uphold the dignity of all individuals. They should promote equality, they should promote equity, they should promote social justice. They are required to promote inclusiveness in public service delivery, and to ensure that all citizens have equal access to public services and public opportunities. 3 is integrity. Another national value is 3, integrity, accountability, transparency. Integrity, accountability, transparency, and responsible use of resources. Integrity is a fundamental value in public service, and public servants should act with the honesty, integrity, and transparency in their dealings with the public and their colleagues. That should be, they are required to be accountable for their actions and accountable for their decisions and the use of public resources responsibly and efficiently. The fourth national value, servant servant leadership. Servant leadership. And this servant leadership is required from all public servants, and public servants are expected to demonstrate servant leadership, prioritizing the needs of the public and serving with humility and dedication. They should maintain high standards of professionalism, ethics, and competence in their work, continuously seeking to improve their skills and knowledge. Servant leadership. 5, collective responsibility. Public servants should work collectively and collaboratively and share responsibility for achieving common goals. They should support each other and work together to provide efficient and effective services to the public. There is the last one here in the Constitution is sustainable development. Sustainable development is a national value. That is to say that not meant to meet only the short-term needs, but also the long-term needs, taking into consideration the needs of future generations. So public servants should shy away from what we call short-termism. Short-termism. So sustainable development is a national value. National value. We've discussed human dignity, patriotism, good governance, integrity, transparency. So these are national values. And candidates, the national values are not merely aspirational. They are not merely aspirational, but are legally binding on all public servants. These are not things that the public servants should aspire to attain. No, these are values that are legally binding on all public servants. And the Public Service Commission in the public service. So the PSC has developed a code of conduct and ethics for public officers that outlines the expected standards of behavior and the consequences of breaking these standards. So by upholding these national values, public servants can build trust, they can enhance service delivery, and contribute to the development of a just and equitable society. So the values candidates provide a framework for ethical decision making and public and a guide. These values provide a guide to the public servants in their daily interactions with the public and in the daily interactions with their colleagues. So that is the end of the lesson on leadership, integrity, and national values in public service in Kenya. We began by analyzing aspects of leadership in public service, and we identified 4 aspects: ethical leadership, transformative leadership, citizen-centric leadership, and we have performance management. We also identified 7 challenges in public service. One is political interference and patronage. Number 2, corruption and mismanagement. Number 3, inadequate capacity and skills in the public service. Bureaucratic inertia and resistance to change. 5, weak accountability and transparency. 6, inadequate resources and infrastructure. And social cultural factors. We identified 5 key elements of integrity. 1, honesty and truthfulness. The second one is impartiality and fairness. Number 3, accountability and transparency. Number 4, respect for the rule of law. And lastly, professionalism and competence. In closing, we've discussed the national values in Kenya. One is patriotism, national unity, and today's assignment on leadership, integrity, and national values in public service. 1, how does political interference undermine effective leadership and integrity in the public service, and what strategies can actually model and promote national values such as patriotism, integrity, and social justice within the organizations? 3, how does the lack of ethical leadership contribute to the erosion of integrity and national values in the public service, and what measures can be taken to foster ethical leadership? 4, what role does citizen participation play in promoting leadership, integrity, and national?